Hello, my name is Damani Thomas, and I'm presenting research over the author Lorraine Hansberry. I chose Lorraine Hansberry for this project because of my previous experience reading and watching her play A Raisin in the Sun. Going back to my high school days, I read the poem The Dream Deferred by Langston Hughes. In this poem, Langston Hughes says, "What happens to a dream deferred? Does it drop like a raisin in the sun, or festers like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crush and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode?" I know this because I had to memorize this poem in my class. After reading and discussing this poem in my class, we had to read the play A Raisin in the Sun, which really resonated with me because the family in the play grew up in such an impoverished situation, a situation similar to my surroundings growing up in Baltimore, Maryland. We watched the Sidney Poitier version of the play after reading it, and to my surprise, and the play was remade on Broadway in recent years with Felicia Rashad, Sanaa Lathan, and Diddy playing the major roles. I had never had a chance to see the live version of the play, but think the play tells a very good story that is still relevant today. Throughout this presentation, I will show you various pictures relating to Lorraine Hansberry life experiences. The title of my presentation is Lorraine Hansberry, Young, Gifted, and Black. According to Proverbs verse 29 of the Holy Bible, where there is no vision, the people will perish. If people don't have a plan or a goal in mind for their lives, they will succumb to the ways of the world. Lorraine Hansberry was one of the most prolific writers of the 20th century within a short period of time. Hansberry created pieces of literature that depicted her view of the world and the life of her own experiences. She told the story of a group of people who felt disenfranchised and disillusioned about the life they could have in the United States of America. Lorraine Hansberry broke barriers and positively impacted American culture views by bringing to the life struggles and joys of the African American experience. Lorraine Hansberry's most popular work in the play, A Raisin in the Sun, which was published in 1959. The play is a semi-autobiographical because it chronicles the experience Hansberry's own family adored as she grew up in Chicago. When creating her play, Hansberry says she wanted to write a social drama about blacks that will be considered good art. A Raisin in the Sun was the first play written by African American woman performed on Broadway. Hansberry was a pioneer. She opened the door for other great African American, especially women, including Alice Walker, to have their own work performed on Broadway. Lorraine Hansberry grew up in Chicago, where she lived for most of her life before relocating to New York City. Hansberry attended several colleges, including the University of Wisconsin from 1948 to 1950, the Art of Chicago, and the Roosevelt University. While at the University of Wisconsin, Hansberry became active in politics. At this time, Hansberry was a very young 20-year-old girl who was vulnerable to her surroundings. She wanted to make a difference in the world she had been taught to do by her parents growing up. Hansberry began active in politics while in Wisconsin and continued her political life after she moved to New York City. In New York City, Hansberry honed her writing skills and also studied at the New York School for Social Research. She worked for a black newspaper company known as Freedom. By working at the newspaper office, Hansberry also was able to write with a purpose and continue her life in politics. Hansberry gained a mentor in Louis Burnham, the editor of the newspaper, who helped Hansberry bring to life the dreams she had once had as a teenager, becoming a journalist. Hansberry created her play A Raisin in the Sun with encouragement of Burnham and worked to ensure that her story would be heard. Hansberry modeled the characters in her play after her own life. The character Benita Younger represented Hansberry herself. Benita searches for an identity in a world where she, as an African American female, did not appear to have a place. Hansberry play resonates with so many people in society because the characters in the play represent so much of life. The main character, Walter Lee, represents every man who struggles to provide and be the man of his family. Mama represents the archetype of love and affection in the face of adversity. The play explores familiar issues surrounding the death of the family. This was an important issue to Hansberry because she lost her own father when she was a teenager. In today's society, the absence of a father figure in the home still exists. In fact, in families where a father exists, many of them feel the feelings of inferiority. Walter Lee, as he struggled to achieve his dreams in A Raisin in the Sun. Since its creation, the play has translated into a number of languages. Despite all of her work, she did to promote the black experience. Hansberry did not get to enjoy much of her success as a writer. She died of pancreatic cancer at the young age of 34. According to Sproul, during the 1960s, the African American theater scene became liberated. Many writers during the time wrote about black consciousness and exposed the crisis that exists in African American community regarding identity and acceptance of both from others and of the self. As a result, Hansberry play A Raisin in the Sun was performed on Broadway in 1973. Following her death, Hansberry's former husband, Robert Neroff, published several of her unpublished writings in a book form in 1970 and created a Broadway production of those writings entitled To Be Young, Gifted, and Black. According to psychologists, two factors played a role in our development through our lives. Those things are nature and our nurture. Our nature, genetics, plays a 50% role of our development, while our nurture environment also plays a 50% role in our development. Lorraine Hansberry grew up with her parents who were intelligent and strong and encouraging their children to stand up for their beliefs. They encouraged their children to stay true to their family and their race. Hansberry's upbringing set the foundation for the environmental struggles that propelled Hansberry into her future work as a political advocate and a writer. Lorraine Hansberry was truly young, gifted, and black. The impact she had on American culture is still relevant and useful today. Race relation and racial inequality are two conversations still being had in the United States of America. Lorraine Hansberry had a vision. She had a vision to accurately depict the lives of African Americans in an uplifting way to prevent the further perishment of African American community. Hansberry achieved her vision and did so by painting a picture for all the world to see. Here are all the sources I used to create this presentation. Here are a few questions I have for you to ponder. Thank you for listening to this presentation. I hope you all learned something new.